Hey guys, welcome back to the AnKorage where everything is awesome, and I am kind of excited because I get to play with this a little more. I don't have to wait till Halloween, so we've got it. So, you know, this is the somewhat famous Proton pack from Ghostbusters, and this one in particular is basically a scan from the movie prop from Ghostbusters Afterlife 2021 film. And you know, and it's got a lot going on. It's very, very busy. And I recently saw a video where it talked about, well, how do these things work? And I'm like, that's pretty interesting. So I was curious, and I watched it, and when I looked through it, it was very interesting, and it was very informative. And everything that's on here has its own purpose and how it works and everything like that, which basically it boils down to this thing is theoretically possible. You know, as far as a practical approach, yeah, it's not very practical because, you know, it is just a prop and things are only so big and there's only so much power that can, you know, come out of one of these things and be legal, namely. But it's pretty good. So I wanted to take you on a journey around the pack and actually tell you about it, and basically I'd be repeating what I learned from the video I saw, and take you through the track of everything inside of here, excuse me, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I've moved out here to the living room so that I could have this set up on the chair, and for the sake of lighting so we can see it a little better, I'm going to zoom this in and we will discuss it. Alright, so here we have it. So I've got, in order to get a little bit of a zoom in on this, I had to kind of just take it from the top half, and then we'll move on down below to the lower half. So the top is kind of like where it all begins, and it's right here in this spot right here. This is about that long, and this is the fuel core. Basically this works similar to nuclear power plants today with fuel rods. This is actually a cylinder of a bunch of fuel rods with the radioactive isotope carbon-14. And it's like, where in the world did the Ghostbusters get carbon-14? Well, according to a comic, they had it left over from another experiment that they had approval to have carbon-14, and they use that. And so it's a round cylinder. This here on the front is just a stability rail of sorts and such like that. So what this does is this provides electrical power to the system. This is the fuel of the electrical power. So we have a couple of wires here that go to a couple of things. These were not here in the 1984 or 89 films. This is an upgrade of sorts for Afterlife. I'll discuss that a little bit further when we get down to those areas. But over here on this side, and why don't I actually turn it on so you can see it a little bit. And I'll turn the volume down, so that way we can see what's going on and not actually have to worry about hearing all the noise all the time. So you can see I got the blue light coming up and everything like that. This section here is the power cell. This, you know, it's the power cell control systems. The motherboard is located up in here, and of course we have this ion arm. This is brass. You know, it's kind of like an antenna of sorts. The part that I think on how it operates is that this is what dissipates negatively charged ions from catching ghosts. That may be how this is actually supposed to work, but otherwise it's just a really pretty little add-on just to give it some neat little looks to it. And you know, this graph here, you know, of course you see it like that. You know, it's just to let you know that this is active, and this is to let you know that, okay, it is currently regulating the power that is coming off of the fuel rods in here. So that comes into there. Of course, on this prop, replica, this is actually a container where you can store things, and there's some pegs here. I can put little mini pups on it and have them standing here. And I've got my finger up there right now holding my little speaker, which gives it a lot deeper, a lot louder, authentic kind of sound to it. So, and then from there we move down here to this section. These are basically the accentuators down in this box area right here. This is where the fuel, of course, it gets converted from fuel to electricity down into here, and then it goes into this power distribution module, so it can actually send power to different places. We see there's a blue hose up here. This is a blue cable. You can see that it comes right up here, and it is connected to this top area. This is what powers the motherboard and the regulator over here. And of course, it just timed out. I should probably switch this over to the other side. There we go. Okay, so I've got the Stay Alive mod running right now. So this will stay on and not shut off until I tell it to do so. So, and then we have, let's see, the power distribution goes up, powers the motherboard, and also the power cell box, the control box, everything like that. And then if I feel on the back side of it here, there is a cord that goes up here. Actually, this one comes down here to the cyclotron. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you have another wire here, this red one. This feeds up here to this cylinder up here, and this is dual purpose. This cylinder up here. This is the hydrogen cell, where it it works off of hydrogen as well. So it comes into here, and then this is the ionization chamber, which is this entire manifold, more or less. This entire box, this entire section right in here, and we get the electrical, so that it pumps it in, and then it comes into here, and then this is inside of here is a what was it? It's a filament that gets the hydrogen piping hot and ionizes it. And from there, what it does is it has this hose here, which has a couple of different things on it. We see that it's got some wires poking out of the side here, out of this this tubing covering. It's got a name, I can't think of it right at this moment. But it also has a very thin tube, which is actually feeding oxygen down into this section here. Excuse me, hydrogen. It's feeding hydrogen down into here, and things of that sort. What else do we have going on here? And if I look up at the camera, see what we're talking about. Well, we've basically covered everything that's going on up here. This is of course on this unit. This is the volume. However, in actuality, there's nothing that says exactly what this does. But considering that this is the hydrogen ionization chamber in here, I think this is the hydrogen flow control to be able to tell you, do we need more hydrogen, do we need less? So that is what that would be used for. So, and of course down under here I've got my switch for my Stay Alive mod, but there's nothing major right there. And then there's a hole right back here where a couple of cables come out. Let's see if I'm looking up here, we can see the top of the ribbon cable, which is right here. And of course, then we have this yellow sheath. It's a hose cable kind of thing. It's an electrical cable. And it feeds right into the back part here to the actual motherboard of the actual whole pack. So, and of course, you know, this is a data line. This is actually real IDE cable or SCSI cable. It's real, because when I had the back off of it, and I looked at the end of it and everything like that, and there's wires. So this is real. It's not an injection mold, and it just has a black wash on it to kind of give it that weathered look. This sheath, this yellow sheath, is not original. This is something that I put on there, replacing the one that was on here, just to give it a little more authentic look to it. And then of course I rubbed it with some diluted black paint, and just to kind of give it a little bit of weathering. And there we go. So if I stand up and look it over real quick, there's another hose coming off of the hydrogen injector of sorts that leads down to here, but of course you can't see it. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to switch this to the lower half, and we can talk about that. Okay, I've moved the image down, the camera down, so we can see the bottom of it here, and I've actually moved the camera back a little bit to get a little bit of a wider angle on it. So we're going to talk about this lower section from here down, so you can see it all. So here's the accentuators, here's the power distribution module. You can see the hose coming down to the I'm going to call it the pump, the hydrogen pump, because it's all ionized, and it's brought down into here, which is the top section, and then the hydrogen goes from here and gets pumped into, I'm going to call it an injector, because this is where the clippered valve is, which is a pneumatic tool. They really exist, and this is driven off of that. It actually has a clippered valve label, sticker on it. So there's that, and of course we've got this hose here that leads to this. Now, what are these two things? This is the source of the hydrogen that gets pumped up to the ionization chamber, and this is the active one. So this is the one, and it holds 20 liters of hydrogen gas. Of course, it's only this big. It's compressed, so it's or liquid hydrogen, or just compressed hydrogen gas. 20 liters in here. This is a spare, so if this ever runs out, you can take this one off, put this one in its place, and you're good to go. So there's that. So the hydrogen gets fed into the injector, which is here, through this pneumatic valve, and then it gets pumped down into the cyclotron, which I'll discuss in another moment. And let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, we have a whole bunch of wires here. These are what's directly connected to the fuel source up here. This wasn't here in the original two films, but they're part of the afterlife upgrades. So why would that be? Well, you've got an electric current coming directly off of the fuel cells into the injector. Why would they want to do that? Well, as part of the upgrade, I think that in afterlife, what Egon Spengler had done at that point was modified it and upgraded it to be more powerful. And how do you get a more powerful proton beam? You have to have a stronger fuel source, or something being stronger in injecting it. So you get a direct electrical feed directly into the injectors to increase that. And then of course this wire assembly down here feeds back up into the motherboard inside, behind all of this, to the motherboard. So so increase power performance. And so that's that. And then we move down to the cyclotron. Now the cyclotron is this entire assembly. It's the entire thing. So it's like, in the movie, Phoebe takes the barrel element out, and I'll actually open this up like that, slide that off, and then you'll notice this will shut off when I take it off. There you go. So I remove it, and of course we've got the inside of it right here. this is the barrel element, and Phoebe takes this portion out, and she's holding it, and she's like talking to herself, or she's actually talking to the spirit or the ghost of Egon, and asks, "How did you make such a small cyclotron?" And she's looking at this when she says that. However, this alone is not the cyclotron. This entire assembly is the cyclotron. And this is based off of the real thing, which is the fuel gets pumped in, and an electrical current, you have these two things. These are called the D coils. What these D coils do is that they're what cycles the particles, the hydrogen particles. So the hydrogen particles get fed up into here, and this is spinning, and it just constantly spins. You can actually get this to turn a little bit, but it's just for show, you know. But you know, the idea in a cyclotron is, let's say you get a particle, let's say, you know, tip of my finger, it spins up and it starts from the center and it works its way out, like this. Now, in this one, it actually goes in this orientation. It goes clockwise. So, how this works is, yeah, you get the cyclotron. Well, how are these actually getting that particle to spin outwards and stuff like that? And that is by alternating the currents between the two D's. So on one half, we'll say this top half, which is this section, will have a positive, let's say, a positive current to repel the positive proton from the hydrogen, and then it's when the particle gets over here to this side, or this lower half, this one then switches over to positive and then pushes it, and it just makes it spin. Now, how is it getting alternated from one of the coils to the other? That's this guy right down here. If I can lift this to see it. There it is. I know what that is now. This is an oscillator. This controls, it's basically the current oscillator, which switches the polarity of positive and negative on these coils here to help propel the proton. And there we go. And it's got this nice shield here, and of course it's got some contact that have to make contact in order for it to come back on, hopefully. There we go. And there it is. So I'll actually do that. And let's see if I can get this back on. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll do it later. So, and then of course we've got this guy. Now I was like, well, how is the cyclotron powered? Well, electricity comes down these. These are called the boosters. So it comes out of the, basically, the electrical current goes through the distributor here, and it gets fed up into the power cell control box, and then electricity is sent down through these boosters, because there's two of them, and then it gets fed down here and into the cyclotron to power the cells. Excuse me. To power the oscillator coils. And so that's what that is. So that's what powers those. And these are fairly large. So that would make sense on why everything like that is of size, because you know, you have to, it's pumping through a lot of power to provide to the cyclotron. And Now, this wire over here, this actually comes off of the power distribution module, and then gets fed into the top cover of it. So, you know, and it's like, if you were to see the actual interior of the cyclotron, you know, it would be completely useless, and there would be a lot of hurt going on because you've got particles flying out everywhere. That's why this cover's here. It's protected. And also, when you look at the inside the cover, you know, you've got these here. These are CRT emitters. And so you can't, with these block the view of what's going on here. So you cannot see what's going on. And that's why we have those red lights. Because those red lights actually provide a simulation or representation of the cyclotron spinning, of what's going on inside. It's not actually the actual particles going around. It's just a visual representation of what's going on, and that's it. Now, in the original 1984 film, these were solidly lit up. In other words, the entire circular thing was, you know, it would be on, and it would switch one at a time from one to the next and so on. And that would, and that worked out very well. And then in Afterlife, what they did was, and I've seen the actual prop itself and the inside of it, you know, it's like you've actually got an LED or a couple of LEDs on the end of a rod that's centered in the center here, and it actually spins around. So that's where we get this spinning action. And these are just animated LEDs from HasLab that they put together. And so, you know, where does that proton go after it's gone through the cyclotron? Well, then it has to go out to the neutrino wand to throw the actual proton beam, which is not just one beam. It's kind of like two. But anyways, I'll talk about that in the next shot. So we've got our fuel, we've got our electricity going throughout the whole unit, and the proton that's been separated from the electron. Where does the electron go? Well, that gets fed back up through to the ion arm. At least that's my theory on it. But I would think that it would get separated at some point down here and get fed back up through to the ion arm and dissipated through the negatively charged ion or the negatively charged electron, get dissipated into the air. So that's what I'm thinking there. And I also think this also helps with something else, and that comes in with the neutrino wand. The proton charge gets fed through the cyclotron, fed through the hose that comes off the side of it, comes up into the wand, and then it gets held inside of here using magnets. And of course, you've got this thing here which is lined. This is actually a heat sink, because this thing gets hot when it's running. So, I mean, not for real, but the one that could be made if it was real, that's what this would serve as, is a heat sink to dissipate heat, much like a computer. And so you got magnets holding the protons in here, and then of course you use this assembly to fire it off out the emitter. Of course, it's sticking off the end of the just off screen here, but it's literally right there. And of course, you got the handle here. So, and then of course that would bring us to the proton beam itself. So why don't we talk about that? And in the proton beam, it's kind of twofold. The beam that comes out of the neutrino wand, you see a ribbon of sorts. It's wobbly looking, and it's like that. It makes total sense because you've got crackpot scientists that are creating these things, and that the energy involved is very unstable. You would think if they're not all that super smart, then you'd get something that's like an unstable, wobbly looking thing. Whereas if you were a serious scientist, it'd be a straight line like a laser, about it also just makes for better entertainment. But you'll notice that on these proton streams that, yeah, you've got a wobbly main beam, but then on the outside of it you've got this blue electrical, like, you know, almost like lightning kind of thing going on. Well, that isn't going out with the beam. That's actually coming back, and here's why. You'll note if you look back at the original film, Ray Stantz, or Dan Aykroyd, says that you know, if basically ghosts are negatively charged, and a protonic charge would weaken the electrons. So if it's of course it's like, well, you know, if the electronic or whatever, you know, remains constant, then they can really bust some heads. You know, bust some heads, hence Ghostbusters. Oh, yeah, that's you. He's Dan. Yeah, cool guy. But at the same time, you know, it's like, so you have the proton beam going out, and you've got this electricity coming back into the wand. Why? What would be coming back into the wand? Well, the protons being thrown out, hence thrower, proton thrower, is weakening the ghost or the entity. And you know, where are its negatively charged ions going? How do you weaken it? You remove the negatively charged ions or atoms out, so by pulling them away from it. And that's what that blue electrical part of the beam does. It actually pulls that negatively charged part back into the proton pack or the neutrino thrower, and then it feeds back through to what I believe how it operates is it gets fed up through the ion arm and dissipated out into air, because it has to have some place to go, because you can't have a built up, you know, whether it's positive or negative, you can't have too much of one thing, because, you know, boom, bad things. So yeah, you got the proton beam going out, and then you've got the negatively charged stuff coming back in, and so it's a bidirectional beam, and in most, if not all, science fiction films, that's the case, because you've got, at least as far as what I've seen, you're always shooting stuff out, whether it be lasers, blasters from Star Wars, phasers from Star Trek, you know, disruptors from Star Trek, just you know, beam weapons in general, stuff like that. All that stuff is stuff getting thrown out, and whatever it hits gets dissipated at the point of impact. But with Ghostbusters, or Dan Aykroyd, really thought it over and brought it back. Now, everything that Dan has thought of, he actually put a lot of thought into the proton pack, and he's really into everything that's surrounding the paranormal and things of that sort anyways. So, you know, he's of the right mind, and he knows what he's talking about. And the proton pack and everything surrounding it is theoretically possible, and it's on a much smaller scale. Can we actually produce that today? You know, back in '84, that was a big no. Today, maybe. And by going from a no to a maybe, that is a huge, gigantic leap forward. So, you know, I've seen small cyclotrons. I've seen pictures on Wikipedia. And yeah, the unit is what we would think back in '84 would be like the size of a bus, and this thing was about the size of a couch, you know, or two couches sitting on top of each other, you know, just for size difference. Bus, two couches, and that's today, you know. And the cyclotron, it's in itself has, of course, that is, I say old, but it may not necessarily be, because they've got an updated version of a cyclotron that's more square, and it uses magnets to help spin the proton around, or the electron, whichever one they decide to do. But it's just one particle, you know, whether it be one or the other. Could it be a neutron? Meh. If you can isolate it, sure. If you can separate that out, if the atom has that neutron in there, yeah, sure. If it's in there and you can separate it out, sure, you can probably do that. So there you go. And there you go. So that was how does a proton pack work. You know, it's like I would have used diagrams and stuff like that, which I could have done, namely from the video that I saw, but I needed an excuse to actually use my actual proton pack that I've got. You know, that is, it is a unit that was scanned from the movie used prop, and so everything about it is great, and I like it a lot, and I can't wait for Halloween month to come around. I've got my flight suit, I've got my my ID badge on it, I've got the No Ghost logo over here. Right over here I've got, if I can grab it, where are you? There you are. I've got a little New Hampshire patch that I'll be putting on. I'll be asking Donner Strike to go ahead and adhere that to it. I'm thinking that's going to go right below the No Ghost, because I would have liked it over here, but there's places for pens to go, because it is an actual flight suit, and the suits that they wore in the movies are actual flight suits from the time, and you know, the design of those really haven't changed all that much. So, and I've got my flight suit, and I'll just throw it on over my clothes, and because that's what they did, and there we go. So there we are. All right, throw that there. And it's a Thursday, so I've got my Switch to Linux supporter stream tonight that I have to go get ready for. Email hasn't come in yet on what the topic is, but I hope that's going to be soon. But, you know, we've had to cancel on occasion because Tom's busy, which is understandable. So, you know, it could be because he's busy, or he's got bad signal, or it's, you know, the data is about to reset and he's got like none left within reason, enough. So I'm gonna go get ready for that, and we are going to call it there. So I will talk to you later, and don't forget that you want to like, comment, subscribe, and donate some crypto, because I can't do this without that. Nope. Talk to you later. Skál.